You said in 2004 there was no difference between you and George Bush on the war, and you took that speech you're now running on off your website in 2004, and there's no difference in your voting record and Hillary's ever since. Give me a break. This whole thing is the biggest fairy tale I've ever seen.
Well, according to several sources, behind closed doors, Bill Clinton is not that big a fan of Barack Obama and has even bashed him, called him an amateur. The Amateur is the title of the new book by New York Times bestselling author Edward Klein. He joins me now. Ed, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for being here.
Let me start, because I know that there are going to be some people who will say, okay, this Ed Klein guy writes a very negative book about Barack Obama, how he's the amateur, not prepared for the presidency. And that's because Ed Klein is some right-wing fanatic. He's way out there on the fringe. Your background is New York Times writer, Newsweek, New Yorker. You've written for all of these publications that, last time I checked, aren't exactly considered right-wing.
That's right.
Did you have an agenda?
I've been a reporter for 50 years, and I decided that this was a phenomenon that we needed to investigate. Here's a guy who came out of nowhere, an African-American senator who had accomplished nothing, had no experience, somehow hypnotized millions of people into voting for him, and then gets into the White House and is the first time that we've ever seen anything like this, an amateur in the White House. To me, it was a great story, a story that needed to be told because it had a direct impact on the future of our country.
You talk about in the sort of the forward of the book that there were hundreds of people with whom you spoke, gathering the information, many of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the things that they revealed. So this is not just street talk. These are people firsthand that have seen and heard what you describe in the book.
I think of the 200 people I interviewed, the majority are on the record, named sources, and none of them have come forward since the book was published to say, oh, I didn't say that. Not a one. So I feel that the book is very solid and that it has the kind of sourcing that most books of this nature don't have.
You start the book with an incredible discussion of Bill and Hillary Clinton at their home in Chappaqua, New York, and that's where the title from the book, The Amateur, comes. Describe that scene in Chappaqua.
Well, Bill held a meeting in August of 2011 in Chappaqua, their home, in his private office, which is at a converted red barn. He invited Chelsea, his daughter, and his wife, and some friends, several friends. I interviewed two of those friends who were there. And during that meeting, he tried to convince his wife in 2011 to challenge Barack Obama for the Democratic nomination. He wanted her to unseat Barack Obama. And she... And she said, Bill, how can I do that? I'm his Secretary of State. I dine with the guy every Thursday. What about loyalty, Bill? What about loyalty? And he said, loyalty? There's no such word as loyalty in politics.
Unfortunately, for some.
Then he went on to say that the people around Obama, especially the economic people, did not know how the real world works, and that Obama himself was an amateur. And that's where the title comes from.
This program is brought to you by Quality. Get your money's worth at Quality. Book now at Quality Inn.
I'm back with Ed Klein. He's the author of the book, The Amateur, #1 New York Times bestseller for the past 2 weeks. It is the story of Barack Obama in the White House. Ed, before we were talking about the possible challenge, which obviously did not happen, but there has been some very interesting things come from your book, one of which is that there's been a real rift between Oprah Winfrey and the Obamas. She was one of his biggest supporters, credited with giving him a huge boost. What happened there?
Oprah was pivotal in getting him the nomination because if she had gone to Hillary, Hillary would have won, I'm sure. And then she was very instrumental in helping him in the general election. So she assumed, naturally enough, that she would play a big role in the administration. And she and Obama started talking about how he should redecorate the Lincoln bedroom for guests and who the guest list should be for parties, how he should handle his communication strategy. And when Mrs. Obama, Michelle Obama, and her closest friend in the White House, Valerie Jarrett, heard about that, they got very upset because they thought Oprah was horning in and acting like she was the First Lady. So they decided to freeze her out. And when Oprah offered to do an Oprah Winfrey show to launch Mrs. Obama's anti-obesity campaign, Michelle held a meeting and said, I don't want some fat, rich woman being the emblem of my campaign.
Wow. You know what, Oprah? I'm going to tell you, sweetheart, you endorsed the wrong person 4 years ago. Should have been me. Should have been me. There you go. I had to throw that in there, Ed. There have been other very interesting high-level people in the Obama administration that have abruptly left. Rahm Emanuel, as well as Bill Daley. Two men who were chief of staff. What happened? Because it's rare that people in that position just sort of kind of one day up and leave.
They ran into the buzzsaw named Valerie Jarrett, who is Mrs. Obama's closest friend and political advisor, the president's friend and political advisor, the only person in the White House who goes upstairs every night and dines with the First Family, goes on vacation with them, leaves the Oval Office last, has the president's ear, enormous power. And she is the gatekeeper of the White House. And she has run into conflict with both of the chiefs of staff, with Bill Daley, who was opposed, for instance, to the mandate requiring religious institutions to provide free medical advice on contraceptives and abortion. She pushed that and got it through, and Daley decided he had had enough and he left.
You made a comment, in fact, I remember it vividly, page 61 of the book, and it's a powerful statement because it's one that I often quote, that Obama's problem is he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And I've often said the most dangerous person in any room is the person who doesn't know what he doesn't know. Describe how that really fits Barack Obama.
It fits him to a T because he feels that he's the smartest person in the room. I interviewed many people who have been in cabinet meetings with him or at what they call bicameral meetings in which both the Republicans in the House and Senate and the Democrats meet in the White House. And sometimes he takes phone calls from foreign leaders. And he's been overheard to say to these leaders, and I have this in my book, I don't understand why I have to spend so much time with congressmen from Podunk City to get my bills passed. It's that kind of arrogance that has really been the block and obstacle to doing business in Washington between the White House and Congress.
Well, you've done the country a great service by giving us insight that we've never had before. I know that our audience here in the studio is going to enjoy the book, as will you. It's a very easy read in the sense that it's a great book for anybody to read. Ed Klein, the book is called The Amateur. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much.
It's really a pleasure having you.